2, 1, go.
Subscribe to Wolf's T-Series.
Yeah, do that. What's up, YouTube? It's your boy, Wolf's STI here, back with another video. And today, I'm going to show you how to trace code in for loops. I know I was a YouTuber, but I took some break time to become the greatest hacker alive. I work for the CIA now, and I hack every sorts of stuff. So these peons over here don't know what they're doing. They're trying to figure it out. But I'm going to show you the fast, easy way to learn how to trace code in for loops. Hey, don't stop it yet. And it'll be better than that right there. So let's get into it. Make sure to like the video, subscribe, comment. Yeah, goodbye. Oh. Alright, so let's get into the first problem here. Okay, so you see it starts off with integer or variable 1, which is an int, is set to 0, and variable 2, which is also an integer, is set to 2. Okay. And then the problem goes, while variable 2 does not equal 0 and variable 1 divided by variable 2 is greater than or equal to 0, variable 1 is set to variable 1 plus 1, and variable 2 is set to variable 2 minus 1. And we're going to trace these variables as we go.
Okay, so what you want to start out by doing is you want to first figure out what your two variables are first equal to. So you have two variables in this case, var1 and var2. I just created a table here, which is really helpful when it comes to tracing code. And you basically compare these two values and see what they're equal to each time this code runs. So to start off with, var1 is first equal to 0. So you put a 0 here, because that's what var1 is first equal to. And var2 is first equal to 2, because that's what var2 is first equal to. It's defined before the code runs the first time as these two values. You then keep running the code until it just stops running. Basically, every time you run the code, you have to check to see if these conditions are true. And this is first off a while loop. That means that while these conditions are true, you run it, and once either of these conditions are wrong, you stop the code, because this is an and statement, meaning that if either of these are not true, then you just stop the code and you're done. So we can go ahead and start here. So we have that while var2 is not equal to 0 and var1 divided by var2 is greater than or equal to 0, you run the code. So you first check what your variables are equal to in order to see if you can run the code. So var2 is equal to 2, that's not equal to 0, and 0 divided by 2 is equal to 0, so you can run the code the first time. So var1 is equal to var1 plus 1. Since var1 is equal to 0, 0 plus 1 is equal to 1, and that's what var1 is equal to now. So var1 is equal to 1 now. And then var2 is equal to var2 minus 1. So since var2 is equal to 2, you do var2, which is 2 minus 1 is equal to 1. So var2 is now equal to 1. So now that you do that, you go back to the beginning and you do the same process over again, and you repeat this until one of these conditions isn't true, and then you're done. So now var2 is still not equal to 0, it's 1. And var1 divided by var2 is 1, which is greater than 0, so you run this again. var1 is equal to var1 plus 1, so this would now be equal to 2. And var2 is equal to var2 minus 1, and it's now equal to 0. So now you go back, see if you can run the code again. But see, now you have a problem, because var2 is equal to 0, so the loop stops running, and then that means that these two values are your final values of var2 and var1. So basically this problem ends with var1 equaling 2 and var2 equaling 0. And then you are done tracing the code.
What a genius we have here. Oh my gosh. Alright boys, time for loop tracing number 2. Let's get it. Okay, so this is our second problem here.
So here we have variable 1 is equal to 2 and variable 2 is equal to 2. So we have a for loop here. If integer I starts at 0, if integer I is less than variable 1, and then I plus plus, variable 1 is equal to variable 1 plus 1, and variable 2 is equal to variable 2 minus 1. So as for loops work, they just continue until this statement is false.
Okay, so basically what you want to do first is always you want to create a table to track the two variables so that if this for loop ends up working, you can figure out what var1 and var2 are equal to, sometimes in relation to one another. Okay, so what you want to start out is you first want to figure out what var1 and var2 are equal to start off with. So as you can see up here, int var1 is equal to 2. So var1 is first equal to 2, and then int var2 is also equal to 2, so var2 is first equal to 2. So now you have these two variables, and you're going to run the for loop. So first off, you say for int I is equal to 0, I is the iterator of the for loop, so each time the for loop runs, this represents how many times the for loop has run. So first, int I is equal to 0, as long as I is less than variable 1, which is up here, and then I plus plus. Each time the for loop runs, once it's over, you increment I by 1 and run the for loop again. So you start off with var1 is equal to var1 plus 1. So var1 is equal to 2, 2 plus 1 will give you 3, so var1 is now equal to 3, and var2 is equal to var2 minus 1. var2 is equal to 2, 2 minus 1 is 1, var2 is now equal to 1. And now you increment I by 1, so I, and actually it's also good practice if you also have I in your table to keep track of what it is as well, because it influences this code. So I is first equal to 0, you run this loop once, and now I is equal to 1, and you run the loop again. var1 is equal to var1, which is now 3 plus 1, which would give you 4, and then var2 is equal to var2, which is now 1 minus 1, which would give you 0. And the for loop is done, you increment I by 1, you get 2. But now you can notice something here, and that is that var1 will always be less than I in this for loop, because you increment I by 1 each time, and you increment var1 by 1 each time. So this loop will keep on running and running and running and running and running forever, and that is what we call an infinite loop. And that's a big no-no in coding. You do not want to do that. So pretty much, whenever you see something like this, you can classify it as an infinite loop, and then basically that is a big mistake. So yeah. Yeah, go.
Alright boys, now we got our third tracing problem. Let's get into it. Let's get into it.
Okay, so this is our final problem here. So we have a different type of problem now. Basically, this problem is not necessarily going to return a value stored in a variable like var1 or var2. Instead, it's going to return what we call an output. And output basically is what is returned to the console after all of this stuff is run. So we're going to start out with the very beginning before the for loop runs, because this code does have stuff that goes on. So you start out by looking at the two variables you have, var1 and var2, and var1's first set equal to 0, and the top, this is a bad marker. I'm going to use a blue one because this one ran out of ink. So we have var1 is equal to 0 to start off, var2 is also equal to 0. And then after that, whenever you see something that says system.out, that means it's printing something or returning something to the console. And whatever this code ends up returning to the console at the end is our output. So we want to keep track of that. So it says system.out.print wolfstas. So wolfstas is our output to the console so far. So I'm gonna write this in here. And then after that, you want to go into the loop. So now, in the loop, var2 gets set equal to 7, var1 is still equal to 0, And the for loop runs while var2 is greater than var1. So var2 is 7, which is greater than 0, so the for loop runs, and every time the for loop runs, you subtract -2 from var2. And we just showed that by plus equaling -2 to var2, meaning every time the for loop runs, you add -2 to var2, so that just decrements var2 by 2. So now you run this for loop, basically system.out.print z. Now the thing is, we used print instead of println. All print does is it prints whatever you have here, and then it just doesn't hit enter. So whatever I print next will be on the same line as this. So when it says system.out.print z, this z is going to be on the same line as this and with no spaces because I didn't include any. So the new output is just going to be wolfstas with an extra z at the end. So we write this out to make sure we're keeping track of it. And now we go back to the beginning of the for loop and we do it again. So now we say that we do this again. So now var1 would be equal to 0, and then var2 would be equal to 5. Then you run this again, you do the same thing, only you add another z onto the end. And then you do it again. So you still have var1 is equal to 0, and then you have var2 is decremented now to 3. The thing is still true, so you add another z at the end. And finally you do it again, and then you have that, you still have that this is true, so you do it one more time. And then you finally do it one last time, and because now this is not true, we say it's done, and your end result or your output is this right here. But there's one more thing you need to do, because as you see at the bottom here, then it finally has system.out.print, and it has 3 exclamation points. So what you do is you place 3 exclamation points after this, as all of this is being printed on the same line, because this is system.out.print. And this right here would be your output, and you are done.
Wolfstas.
Subscribe to Wolfstas.
They say it's a good idea to subscribe. It's up to you to subscribe or not. Have fun.
Subscribe. 2, 1, go.
Subscribe to Wolf Says T series.
Yeah, do that.